Good morning and welcome back to the Good Morning Minute podcast. I'm your host, Angelina Mojica, and I'm excited to kick off season 2 with a theme that touches every single one of us: relationships. That's right, friends. Relationships are at the heart of our human experience. They shape who we are, how we grow, and how we show up in the world. Whether it's family, friends, romantic connections, or even the relationships we have with ourselves, each one carries lessons, challenges, and moments of pure joy. This season, we'll sit down with incredible guests who will share their stories, wisdom, and insights on building, nurturing, and even healing relationships. So grab your coffee, settle in, and let's dive into conversations that inspire connection and growth. Now that I've set the stage for today's conversation on relationships, I'm thrilled to introduce our guest. She brings a unique perspective and a wealth of experience to the table, and I know her insights will leave you feeling inspired and equipped to navigate your own relationships with more intention and understanding. So please join me in welcoming Debbie back to our Good Morning Minute show. She is not a stranger. And we are excited, Debbie, to have you here. Go ahead and just give a little intro to our listeners.
Well, first of all, thank you for having me back. I love that I get to come and share this time with you again. My name is Debbie Cunningham. As she said, I'm a jazz recording artist, author, speaker, a podcast host, and I've been married over 37 years to my high school sweetheart, so I know a little bit about relationships. I have
That
2 kids and 2 grandsons, so life is busy and full, but we enjoy it.
that is awesome. Yes, and grandchildren. I just heard that I will have an addition to our family this later this fall, so I'm excited.
That's
Grandchildren bring
exciting.
they bring such a
Congratulations.
thank you. They bring such a blessing to my heart for sure, and I'm sure you experienced that as
Now, is
well
this
with
your
your own.
first grandchild?
This will be my third.
You're
So,
third, so you're one
yes.
ahead of me.
But my first for my oldest son, so I'm thrilled for him. He's super excited, and I it just blessings all around, and I love that. Um Speaking of relationships, talking about grandchildren, tell me, Debbie, what is your interest in this topic? I know that you have a special interest, and it kind of where did that get inspired from?
Well, first of all, I've been singing in jazz. I've been singing about love and romance for over 20 years. So partly there, I sing to couples all the time.
Mhm.
But also my relationship with my husband is important to me. My relationships with my kids and grandkids. I came from a divorced home. So and then my mom remarried and he adopted us. So that's a whole another set of relationships, which is great and enriching. But this particular idea of talking about relationships actually came out of my last album, which was called A Million Kisses. And I wrote that album, all the songs about the journey of staying in love, long-term love, the ups and downs and the celebration of it all. And that's kind of where it started.
Beautiful. And so I know that you have a book out there based
Mhm.
on relationships, and I know we're going to talk a little bit about that. But what do you think is the fundamental or the key aspect in having a healthy relationship?
Well, I have some things that I think are the keys, but there's one in particular
Mhm.
that as I did research for the book, my fans listened to those lyrics and said, "You should write a book." And I thought, well, I've never written a book. I've just written songs. So no, thank you. But then a lot of people asked me. And so I started to delve into what is it that keeps people in a good relationship or building a good relationship and connecting. We have to find deep connection with one another. And in
Mhm.
order to do that, it takes some intentional practices.
Okay. Well, let's jump into it. What are some of those practices? What do you start? Like what's the first?
Well, I think the number one key that will transform, I'm just going to start with the key that will change your relationships, all of them. Your relationship with your spouse, your relationship with your children, And that is prioritizing fun and laughter in that relationship. And the reason I say that is because when you fall in love, you are having fun together. That's actually how you build your love relationship, is by doing enjoyable activities with another person. And you feel very deeply connected to them. And when you're doing fun things together and when you are laughing together, you are exerting the hormone oxytocin is increased in your body, and that hormone is actually the hormone of love and connection. So you feel connected to that
Mm,
person. And what's amazing about that is that's how couples who are distant from one another or have drifted apart can begin to inch back toward each other again if they start to really be intentional about having fun together and prioritizing that in their relationship, which many of us, as we've been married a long time or together a long time, forget to do, including with our teenage kids when there's
mm,
a distant in those difficult years. If you will prioritize having fun with that child, doing something they enjoy, and having laughter together, it will change your relationship.
mm. I like that intentionality with prioritizing fun because I see that from a parenting perspective. I can see that you're always getting onto your kids about like, oh, you didn't get this right, or you can do better in this, and it's just that redundant. You can do better, or it's just not quite right. It kind of wears a person down. Like, this is the only energy that I'm receiving in this relationship. So it shifts that dynamic to really bring back the love and the joy in each other's presence. Am I getting that right?
Yes, it's exactly it. Especially with kids, but even with your spouse or a
Hmm.
significant other, you can see how focusing on the negative, the nagging, the oh, you didn't do this, oh, you forgot the milk, oh, you didn't do this thing that you said you were going to do for me, or that irritation that we continue to have with one another. When you're parenting, you basically are your surrogate child's frontal lobe. So you're trying to help them learn how to organize, how to prioritize, how to do all the things that their brains aren't actually developed to do yet until they're like 25. And so it's exhausting as a parent, but if you don't have those times of refreshment, which is what dating is, like even when you go out on a date with your spouse, the
Hmm.
time of refreshment where you're reconnecting, you're having fun together, and it's hard because then all you're getting is the negative energy, as you just said, and you're not getting that positive input. So if you're always getting negative, you want to move. It's like magnets. If you're always getting negative energy, the positive wants to, move away. So it's very
Right.
difficult.
Oh, I can see that too. It's almost like a reaffirming your love for one another in those romantic relationships, bringing back that spark. You always hear it like the spark, bringing and just keeping the flames ignited because they dwindle down from time to time. You get caught up in the routine of life, and you tend to forget. And often take advantage of that, that time that does drift you apart. And so when you look at each other one day, you wake up and look at each other and you're like, oh my gosh, who are we? It's good to go back there. Okay, so what's the next thing? The next strategy.
Well, one of the things I would say is learn to communicate better. And communication is such a key. And if you think about, let's just talk about the romantic relationships for a second. Your communication, you will go to dinner on a date
Mm,
but you talk. You aren't sitting there on your phone ignoring the person who's across from you. When you go out
mm,
on a date, you're talking and you're asking questions and you're interested in how they feel. You're interested in what's going on in their life. You're trying to get to know this person when you're dating with them. But then when we get married and we're familiar with each other, I mean, my husband and I have been together for 37 years, actually longer, because we dated 5 years before we got married because we were so young. So it's easy to just like we know each other, we're comfortable. So having to be intentional about those conversations. Well, tell me what you think about this in the news, or tell me what you think about, what's going on in our kids' life, or something you heard on Sunday morning at church, anything to get conversation rolling again. And
mhm,
I say the communication is so important because we really need to talk to each other and really build our communication skill of even when things aren't good or we're having a frustration in our relationship.
Mhm.
learning how to phrase certain things so we're not on the defense when we're hearing it. So constantly attacking our spouse or saying, you always or you never. Same with your
Mhm.
kids, always doing the negative verbally. That's all they hear from you. They're not going to stay around to listen to that. So, really getting to the point where you can converse with them and even invite them. How can I communicate these things when we're in a frustration moment so that we can work on them without you being defensive? So, communication
Ooh.
is really a key.
Yeah, for sure. And like you mentioned the you always like and then you also mentioned intentionality and the conversations. So making sure that you are watching the way you communicate. So watching how the words you're using and how the tone that you're expressing and how you're coming across is important in those moments of tough conversations because you're wanting to change. You're not wanting and you're wanting to restore, I guess, balance in the relationship, but not lose the love you have for each other, not lose
Right.
relationship, but really come back together. Um, so yeah, staying away from those words like you always do this. I mean, that's really kind of exaggerating because nobody always does something.
Right.
So like looking at more of a positive perspective when you're communicating and going, I like when you remember to kiss me in the morning or and
Right.
and say good morning. I love when you do that. And almost kind of in enhancing that focus on the things that you do like so that you can kind of hopefully direct that behavior. Oh, she really likes when I kiss her in the morning and I didn't know that or whatever, whatever the case may
Yes.
be. So I like that communication and intentionality. What else do you have for us?
Well, I have a little tip on that too in communicating. And sometimes when
Sure.
you're having to talk about something difficult, a phrase that my husband and I learned years ago was, or a sentence was, when you do this, it makes me feel, or
Hmm.
when you said that, it made me feel. So that you're talking about your feelings. It's not that they did anything wrong, but you can say, when you said that thing, I really felt disrespected. Or when you didn't put the dish in the dishwasher, I really felt disrespected. Like you thought I was a maid. And that hurt my feelings because. And so you can then you're detaching the attack and you're not putting people on the defense when you're trying to explain your point of view in that difficult conversation, which leads me to the next thing. When you are in a relationship, we often assume. You have to stop assuming. We assume so much negative about each other instead of assuming the positive. For instance, on that example I just gave you about that was one of my pet peeves. I used to get mad at my kids. I'm human. How many times have I said, put your dish in the dishwasher, not on the counter? And I used to get so angry about it. But then when I realized sometimes, they didn't do it intentionally to make my day miserable. They were, having fun, or the phone rang when they were going to put the dish away and they got distracted and then they were doing the next thing. And so I think if we can assume the best about someone and not assume the worst, that helps us forgive too the small things, which I think is crucial. It's really easy to allow all these little things to kind of get on our nerves, whether it's your spouse or your kids or a coworker you work with. Allow those things to get on your nerves and then you rehearse them in your head and you build resentment toward them. And
Mhm.
that's unforgiveness. And forgiving those small things is so important. And one of the things I learned to help me with that was, if this person had 6 months to live, would I let this thing bother me? And most of the time the answer was no. So if it was no, and I was just thinking, if they were in that state where they only had 6 months to live, I would give so much grace, like they were just off their
Mhm.
game or they just didn't have it in them today to do that. Taught me to just kind of loosen up and lighten up and not be so rigid about all these things and holding resentment toward them.
Oh, I like that. And you're actually the second person on the podcast that I've interviewed that mentions grace. I think in her interview, she talked about forgiveness, being able to forgive and seeking to understand, like, where is this person coming from? So you mentioned like kids, they get distracted all the time. So their intention may have been, I'm going to put the dish away, but then the sibling calls them or something happens that really does distract, and they do have a one-track mind. So it's like, they have to have that focus, but um understanding that their intention was there to follow through, and so just making sure that they do follow through next time, that maybe that's the conversation you have or whatnot. But I like that, because we need to give people grace in moments. And I never thought of it that way. I never thought, if this person only had 6 months to live, like, how would I engage with them with more compassion, with more
Right.
understanding, with more love? Um, because that your moments are precious. And you know what? That's a reality too, because we're never promised tomorrow.
We are not. We are
Yeah.
not.
Yeah.
And so I think living like that, I have really tried to train myself to live like that. And
Mm,
it's made my world a better place because I'm not so uptight and rigid about so many little things, that really don't matter.
yeah. I feel like I just got like this aha moment, because it's so true, and just the perspective. I just feel like, wow, um, that has made an impression on me just in this conversation.
I'm glad.
Um, but that's what the conversation's about, is to help people out there that are struggling in their relationships. And I like that you're mentioning assumptions, because we assume the worst about things, but also too, that assumption is something internal, because it's almost like an internal belief within ourselves, like, whatever that could be. Like, it
Right.
may be at work where, oh, my boss got on to me about something, but did she really get on to you? Or was it just, hey, next time, remember, do it this way, not this way, and then move on, because like, but you assume the worst, because you assume, like, oh my gosh, and then it's like, she doesn't like me, or I'm always in trouble, or, and then you just go
Right.
down this spiral and this rabbit hole of thoughts. Um, so what else? What other keys do you have in your pocket there for us?
Well, another one I talk about in my book is called intentional kindness. And,
Mhm.
when we first build a relationship with someone, we are intentionally kind. You will go out of your way for that person you are falling in love with. You will go halfway across town to see them for 15 minutes and drive halfway, all the way back. And it doesn't bother you. It's not an inconvenience. Or making coffee in the morning or doing the things that would make their life easier. And often we lose that as we progress in our relationships and we have more expectations of other people instead of us being intentionally kind to them. And so I
Mhm.
just encourage couples, especially, to go out of their way to be kind again and see how that changes their relationship because it really does. Intentional kindness is noticed once you start doing it. When you go out of your way, maybe to pick up the clothes that you don't want to be on the floor and don't complain about it, that's being intentionally kind. Maybe they just are stressed and they had a rough day. Again, it goes back to giving that positive assumption and
Mhm.
but going out of your way to do something kind for someone, like if your spouse always makes the coffee, you get up early and make the coffee and surprise them or do something that would lighten their load, especially that. Intentional kindness is about lightening someone's load or going out of your way to do something that will benefit them. And I think that that goes volumes in your relationship.
Oh yeah, for sure. And it also helps the other that you're relationshiping with feel valued, feel seen, feel heard, feel
Yes.
appreciated. And I mean, I feel so much insight just from your wisdom that you're giving today in your conversation. But because we do, like, and I come from a single mother perspective when I say this, but
Right.
kids that drop their shoes at the door and don't take it to their room, and then you come in and you're like, oh my gosh, this child, put your stuff up. I'm always having to pick up after you. But what you're really telling yourself, it is more negative self-talk, in the sense that I'm always being taken advantage of. No, but
Right.
that does not have to be the case. It could be just, that's a habit that needs to change. So let's have a conversation about the habits.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that
Okay.
takes the personal negative story you're telling yourself out of it.
Mm-hmm.
And you're just dealing with the actual behavior. And you're
Yeah.
taking that emotional connection out of it so that you're not feeling bad about the other person. And also, they're not receiving that from you like, my mom hates me.
Mm-hmm. I can never get it right. Then
I
you start
know.
telling
Or
yourself that.
even
Oh my God.
spouses. I tell
Yeah.
you, husbands feel women, this is not just for women, but I would say in general, we have a more critical tone in our voice
Mhm.
often when we're trying, sometimes when we're just dispelling information, when we're trying to sound more assertive, sometimes we can come off critical sounding,
Mm.
biting. And I think I've had to really work on that because my husband will feel criticized. Like, I wasn't criticizing you. I was really just telling you the facts. He said, it sounded like you were criticizing me. And so we've
Wow.
worked on that
Yeah.
communication style. Like, I want to tell you that I'm not angry, but if we could work on this, it would be helpful. You know, and really
Yeah.
working on our tone of voice too.
Yeah, and that's all part of that communication aspect. It's the, the words you're using, that how you're using them, the tone that you carry. Okay. I feel like I've got this just like this moment of it's just becoming clearer, clearer.
I'm so glad. Yay.
And I love it. I love this insight for sure. What else do you recommend? What other are there other keys that you also have addressed in your book?
I have. I've addressed a lot of things in the book, and even getting through difficult situations. There's a lot of strategies. There's stories of couples and strategies of
Mhm.
what they did through difficult situations to stay together and to just move through that to build a better relationship. And there's stories from things like being roommates. You realize midway in, we're not lovers anymore. We're just roommates. How do we change that? Or stories of difficulty in grief or long-term suffering in a relationship with someone is sick, or you have a family member who has a long-term illness. But then there's even other stories like dealing with adultery or dealing with infertility. And then there's another couple I interviewed that had an arranged marriage, a modern day arranged marriage, and how they learned to stay in love when they didn't fall in love to begin with. And
Wow.
it's a lot of different stories of how we can recapture that lightheartedness in our relationship. But a
Mhm.
lot of the strategies also transfer to other relationships. Like I said, about having intentional fun with your kids, especially if you have those teen years when the kids really they pull back and they kind of want to, we called it the cave season where they just want to hibernate in their rooms, you know,
Uh-huh.
and
Uh-huh.
having intentional times where you had fun together. And I would say in this day and age, really learning to put the phone down and be present with one another when you are spending time together, because the phone is a great tool, but it's a distraction in a relationship. And if
Mhm.
I'm having dinner with you and you're on your phone, I used to text my husband and go, "Hey, who you having dinner with?" Because
Mhm.
he was on his phone. Oh, I was just checking email. And I was like, "Well, I want to see you. I want to talk to you." And he's like, "Okay,
Yeah.
sorry." And he would put it down. But we can encourage without being mad, without being unkind, encourage each other to engage again. We need to engage with one another, when we do have those times to really have a deeper connection. Even things like I go through some typical things of connecting in the book about how you can connect even when you're struggling with one another,
Mhm.
even just taking a walk and holding hands or doing an activity that you can go side by side and just be present, even if you've had an argument and you
Mhm.
just kind of need to cool off, but you can go do that thing you always do beside each other, whether it's riding a bike or gardening or, like I said, taking a walk that builds a deeper sense of connection because it's like muscle memory. You're doing it together to bring connection, but you don't always have to be lovey-dovey about it. And you don't have to be in a great place with your kids to tell them by your actions that they're important to you. And you can call a truce and go out on a date night or a fun family date and have fun together and rebuild those
Mhm.
relationships. So
Yeah.
those are some of the tools.
Yeah, well, and I like that you mentioned like holding hands or going on a walk or something because you're even removing verbal communication out of that. And you're just being very mindful of the moment you're sharing, whether that's in nature, whether that's, a family movie night or dinner or whatever. Just celebrating the connection of physical touch that's not romantically or intimately,
Right.
intimacy, but just the holding of hands or just walking side by side and just being in the presence of one another. That speaks on a whole different level of communication because then you're not having to, especially in those hard moments. You mentioned hard moments, and you mentioned some really tough ones. You mentioned adultery. You mentioned, you know, things like that that are hard to forgive.
Yes.
And and you don't, I mean, you really want to remove yourself from that person's just that person's space. So you're taking that turn where you're stepping back into that space and you're going, I'm here. We're gonna, we're gonna work through this, and it does. It takes a commitment to work through those tough things for
Yes.
sure. But I like the key that you have here of strategies, because just that in itself can do so much more, because
Yes.
people already hate themselves for when they're messing up and making mistakes,
Exactly.
and to have someone that they truly care about and love to come and affirm that already about
Yeah.
themselves is even harder.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. I feel like I've learned so much already, Debbie.
I'm so glad. And
um,
one more really good tip is
sure.
celebrate what is good. Take those times,
Yeah.
moments to, like I said, call a truce when you're having a hard time and celebrate what is good, milestones, moments, whatever it'll be. And just take a day or a night or even an hour and just celebrate what is good and how far you have come, even if you have a long way to go.
Yes. And that's for any goal, really, because I mean, and that's what you're doing is
Absolutely.
you're breaking down the goal. The goal is to stay together, to stay reconciled and connected as in a marriage or any relationship that you have. But when you're in the thick of it and you're in those moments
Yeah.
of hard um situations, it's hard to look back and go, but we had so many good times too. It's
Hmm.
so easy for us to just emphasize and exaggerate the moments that have hurt and
Yes.
things like that. But for to reflect back on those that victories, and even in the moments, the little small victories. Hey, we didn't yell at each
Mhm.
other today. Let's
Yeah.
celebrate
Let's
that.
celebrate that.
For sure. Oh my gosh. Okay, Debbie. So we kind of mentioned this book, but we didn't give it a title. We don't know what the title is, or where can we get it if we're
Okay.
interested in learning more?
Yeah, well,
Yeah.
my book is called Dancing in the Kitchen, and it's about rekindling that lightheartedness in your relationship again. And even though we deal with some of the hard subjects, but it is about rekindling lightheartedness and longevity and life in your relationship and deeper connection. And it is available anywhere books are sold online, or you can get it at debbiecunningham.net /book. I also have a resource, debbiecunningham.net /date night. If a free resource, if they want to get 20 new ideas to have more fun dates, if you're kind of stale and you're dating. And you can use some of those for like family dates with your kids and stuff too. But also, if you go to the debbiecunningham.net /book, you'll see that there's free chapters. There's a free audio chapters for the audiobook, or so. I mean, there's a lot of free resources there for you.
Wonderful. Well, Debbie, I want to thank you so much for coming on to the show once again and just bestowing some wisdom on this topic of relationships. Like I said, I really feel like I had some moments of clarity as we were talking about things. And I know for sure I'm taking away with me some very important insights and strategies that I can implement in my everyday relationships with the people that I engage with. So I hope that people that are out there listening to are taking away that same insight as well. If you could give a piece of advice to maybe somebody that's struggling out there that's listening, what would that be?
To give grace to yourself, to be patient with yourself as you progress in your relationships, but
Mhm.
also really, I'm going to lean into really prioritize having fun. Even you as a single mom, it's really important for you to have times where you have fun with your friends just to rebuild yourself.
Mm.
Fun and laughter is really important in key moments in your life and in hard seasons, especially. I learned that the hard way when my daughter had open heart surgery. And I tell that story in the book because we didn't know she was going to live and how our stress level was so heavy. My doctor said I was having chest pains, and he said, "You need to have fun. I know it's a hard season, but you've got to lighten your own load by
Mm.
having fun and laughter. Watch a funny movie. So take care of yourself and really take time to enjoy moments for your own life because
Mhm.
that will refurbish and refresh you."
Ah, wonderful. All right, everyone, you heard it here first. Debbie and her book, it just sounds like a good read, and I would recommend it. All right, everyone, that is a wrap for us here at Good Morning Minute. Thank you again, Debbie, for guesting on our show. And you know what that means, everyone. I am Angelina Mojica, your life coach, sending you much love, much peace, many blessings.